are monitoring weather situation closely. It's not uncommon, I want to make it very clear, it's not uncommon at this time of the year for us to see localized flooding. This flooding is not related to the spillway or the issues that are going on here, but it's something that we ultimately have to manage in conjunction with what's happening up here and our process up here. To accommodate or deal with that local regionalized flooding, which again is not uncommon for this time of year, 2 evacuation centers have been set up by the Butte County Emergency Operations Center for residents experiencing or anticipating localized storm-related flooding. Those centers are located at the Neighborhood Church in Chico. The address of that is 4801 Notre Dame Boulevard in Chico. Additionally, there is a center set up in the Oroville area at the Church of the Nazarene, which is located at 2238 Monta Vista Avenue in Oroville. I want to make it clear that setting up those centers have been coordinated with the efforts here, and we are not anticipating that having any conflict if the situation here changes and results in us having to initiate an evacuation order. I also want to let you know that later today I will be participating with a conference call that is being coordinated by Shasta County Sheriff Tom Basenko. That conference call will include sheriffs and other public safety professionals from Tehama, Glenn, Yuba, and Sutter counties. The purpose of that call is for all of us to gain a better understanding of what's going on in the region with regard to flooding and flood-related issues, and also continue our ongoing dialogue with regard to how we would manage those situations from a regional standpoint. Those conversations have actually been going on for a while now. We've been in contact with each other and been keeping each other apprised. And a lot of the resources that were brought here to Butte County to assist us with our incident that began last Sunday night were coordinated through our mutual aid system that we have here in California. On another update, the Silver Dollar Fairgrounds remains open for evacuees who have remained, who've decided to remain evacuated. As you know, I lifted the immediate evacuation warning, or the immediate evacuation order, but left in place an evacuation warning. There are still a few people who are in that shelter at the Silver Dollar Fairgrounds, and that will remain open for going forward from here. I also want to give you an update on the fact that Butte County's local public safety professionals have been working very, very closely with CAL FIRE Incident Command Team Number 4 on contingency planning. Those contingency plans would provide us with a much better set of data and criteria to deal with evacuations should the need become necessary in the future. Some good work is being done on that. The thrust of that work is to provide better detailed maps of potentially affected areas, also provide better coordination of staging areas for people and resources and evacuation centers, and alternative evacuation routes so that we can avoid the kinds of congestion that we saw on Sunday. In addition to that, we are developing criteria that would allow us to warn the public of a potential need to evacuate much, much earlier than we had before, also in an effort to make that a much, much smoother process. But again, I want to make it clear, in case somebody's tuning in late, we are still at the evacuation warning stage. There is no indication at this point that an immediate evacuation is pending, but we want people to be aware of what's going on and let them know that we are, in fact, making plans in the event that we have to do that. When we're done with those plans and we have an opportunity to vet them with all of the various public safety stakeholders and the support groups that would help us initiate that plan, then we'll work on getting that information out to the public through various sources. Of course, you and the media will be an integral and important part of that. We'll also use our social media platforms, and I've already started talking about locations throughout the county that we could set up public meetings and provide people an opportunity to see what the plan would be and ask us questions going forward. So my hope is that by the end of the week we'll have a good idea of where we're at with that plan, and we'll be able to start those meetings to inform people what's going on. The last thing that I'd like to do is just remind everybody that it's important to stay informed. It's important to stay prepared. And in the process of staying informed, I certainly want to ask people to be sure that they're getting their information from trusted and reliable sources. It's important to be cautious when you're receiving information from people who may not have accurate information or who may be engaged in speculation or rumor. We're doing our best to provide good information. We're doing our best to provide updated information as soon as it's confirmed. But as you can see, when rumor begins to spread, it can cause more problems than we would like to see. So thank you all very much.
So good morning, Bill Croyle with the California Department of Water Resources. Again, thank you for coming this morning. As the Sheriff said, we took a little time off with these briefings. It was a good time for us to continue to focus on our efforts and get ready for the weather that's come here today. And so I want to start with some of the numbers that we're all kind of watching to understand just the dynamics of the storms coming in and where we're at with regard to reservoir operations. Then I'll quickly review a lot of the successes that we're having over the last couple days since we've talked. Again, I will remind you, we're very focused on our response actions, and our goal is reducing risk and increasing public safety. So that's an important reason for us to be here, communicating with you, but also, as the Sheriff said, is we want to be a high level of situational awareness, and we want to encourage you to continue to be prepared for wet weather. This is spring runoff season. We see high water throughout the valley. As you heard, there's an awful lot of high level of coordination that's been going on. Actually, it starts during the summer with our partner agencies, but this is the time of year where there's daily conference calls and more meetings as necessary. But getting back to the Oroville Dam situation, so as of 11 o'clock this morning, we have inflow of 50,300 cubic feet per second, and we continue to release 60,000 CFS per second. We hit a major goal last night, which is something was one of our objectives here about a week ago, which is to get down to our kind of flood pool elevation of 850. So we hit that 850 foot elevation within the lake at about 2 o'clock this morning. So that's very good news. Right now we're presently down to 849. So we've now again taken a little more water out of the reservoir. And with the inflow staying at this level, we'll continue to, again, remove some of that water from being stored behind the dam. And so we do anticipate what the kind of the storm is here in the next, 12 hours or so. We'll see some of the peak weather come by based on the forecast. So we will see the inflows to the reservoir reach. They've been fluctuating, but as the storm gets closer, I think everyone has better resolution. Somewhere around 110,000 feet per second. We will maintain a release from the reservoir at 60. Again, the reason why we've worked hard over the last week or so is to kind of dig into that reservoir and make more volume available for that flood storage, just like we would in any normal flood operation season. We anticipate if we have that 8,000 CFS come into the reservoir a little later, that we will only see about a 5-foot increase in water surface elevation within the reservoir. Maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. It depends really how and when that peak comes into the reservoir. And so, again, as soon as those peaks come in, again, then we'll have gone on the backside of the storm, and then we'll start to see those inflows to reservoirs drop back. And then because of the forecasted cooler weather later in the week, we actually see snow levels quite low, and then we'll see those inflows to reservoir drop off. somewhere down again in that 25,000 range, and we'll get back into removing more water from the reservoir that's flowing into the water. So I also want to kind of bring up, we are operating the reservoir releases based on our plan. And our plan is to work through, first of all, the spring runoff period, making sure that the water comes in, that we manage it like we typically would with a flood season. Again, there's 3 ways to get water out of the reservoir. We have 1 right now. So we have a kind of a high sense of awareness, our monitoring programs to make sure we're, again, completely understand the water is coming and leaving the reservoir. So what I want to do is I want to kind of mention that we do anticipate ramping the reservoir down and up over here the next 3 or 4, 6 weeks. In some cases, part of our contingency planning is to ramp the reservoir down to almost a 0 Q or a 0 release out of the reservoir. So we are anticipating that as one of our contingency plans. Our goal, if we do that, would be to be able to aggressively attack the debris pile at the bottom of the spillway so that we can further reduce the water that's in a pool up against the Hyatt powerhouse. So the idea behind that at the right time, being the right time is when hydrologically we're set up nicely in the reservoir, we have our staging teams are all in place, the equipment's in place, our safety plans are all approved, and we can get in there and take some additional efforts to remove that rock and debris at the bottom of that spillway. So it's going to take us a couple, 2, 3 days to get all that in place, and again get that reservoir level back down to somewhere around 850. That might not be the number, it might be a little lower, it might be a little higher, but again the key is having everything in place, completely understand the hydrologic setting upstream of the reservoir, and basically be ready to go. That is a priority for us. A lot of the other work is working out very well. And the key is the spillway itself has been very stable. Occasionally we see some erosion here and there, but nothing that's of concern at this time. Up on the emergency spillway, I am amazed at the work that these contractors and our multi-agency team has been able to do during wet weather. We actually had air operations during some of the wet weather, which surprised me, which again, that's because of our focus on making sure we have everything we can do to put in place at the right time to further reduce our risk in that particular area. We still have ground resources working today, again, staging materials when they can place rock or safely place rock or grout and concrete, they'll do that. Again, they're anticipating quite a bit of rain here in the next 12 hours or so. So again, we're going to do that, maintaining a high level of safety and knowledge as we move that equipment around. With regard to the 4 primary areas within just below the emergency spillway, we have priority 1 is 100% complete. Priority 2 is 45% complete. Priority 3 is 100% complete. So again, we're making a little progress there. And priority 4 is 95% complete. So again, we're making excellent progress in those areas. I think our priority 2 is going to take us a little longer. It's we need some bigger material in there, and we want to be able to do that because it's also part of how we access some of the areas that we're also continuing to improve. So we're going to continue armoring that area until these priorities are addressed. We'll continue that work until we're sure, again, kind of a little later in the runoff season, that there's really no chance of us ever having to use that emergency spillway. That's when we'll take those corrective and mitigation measures off the table, and then we'll focus all of our additional resources down on the debris pile at the bottom of the spillway, and also the restart of the Hyatt powerhouse. Again, we are staging additional material. We are working on trying to remove some of the debris at the bottom of the spillway now. Our goal here is to get some barges on the water with our contractors, move those into an area below the spillway, and again, take another attack angle on that debris pile so we can make a little more progress on the debris pile. Again, I want to go back to We will use the same notification process under our unified command with our unified commanders, including the sheriff, our CAL FIRE, and DWR, to make sure that we understand if we're going to reduce the flows or raise the flows, that we agree. We send out those media releases, and we make sure that you're all aware, including kind of the automatic phone calls that go out so that there's kind of no surprises. Again, I want to iterate, this is not because if there's an emergency. This is because of our normal either flood operations, or it's designed as part of our contingency plan to make some adjustments. And again, our focus will be removing as much of the debris out of that channel as we can here in the short time. We continue to have a very high level of monitoring. Again, staff, we've deployed more additional live cameras. We've been able to use the drones quite a bit. When it's rained like this and it's so windy, we won't be able to use the drones. But as we look forward to a little bit better weather, that'll be part of our, if we reduce that flow to somewhere between where we're at now and zero, then again we have a number of different strategies to go in there and collect that data to better understand the spillway, get some of the dynamics, and making sure, again, we can dig as much of that debris out of the way at the bottom. Again, that being said, we have our recovery teams in place. They're coming in and out of our organization here in Oroville. In Sacramento, they've massed quite a few different agencies and technical resources to make sure that we're focused on response up here, but the recovery teams are already engaged and looking at really our approach to this fix and being prepared for wet season next year. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to start right up here. Time for questions.
Bill Brown from the Union newspaper, Grass Valley, California. Does the lack of power at the Hyatt power plant have any effect on your ability to control the spillway gates? What's that power used for at the Hyatt, and what's the power input to the gates of the main spillway? Yeah,
so there's a couple different power sources. Last I was aware we were using our backup power. So we have backup power and a redundant backup power, both at the Hyatt power plant and at the radial arm gates. We have been working with PG&E and our own contractors on realigning some of our power lines to reduce risk to those lines, as well as make some system improvements. We can't operate the power plant without being tied to the grid. So that's an important part of this, but frankly we need to move more dirt out of the way a little faster and drop that pool elevation in front of that Hyatt powerhouse before we can turn it on. So we have a little bit of time, frankly, to make those ties, working with the various parties to improve the access to the grid and maintain line power to those facilities. As I understand it, we do have access. I just don't know exactly if we've gone back to line power at Hyatt power plant.
In the back here.
Are there any plans, I know we're still focusing on the emergency spillway, but would it be possible to use some of those rocks and grout that we're using to fill those erosion areas on the emergency spillway on the main primary spillway and not huge hole?
Yeah, good question. First of all, we're working on everything. We're not just focused on the emergency spill. We're working on the emergency spillway. We're assessing and monitoring the condition of the flood control spillway, as well as attacking the debris at the bottom of the spillway. And a really important mission for us is maintaining the Hyatt powerhouse in a dry condition. So the flood fight there has been very effective. I'm amazed at the strategies that we've come up with our partner agencies and contractors to keep that thing waterproof as the water level has gotten pretty high in front of it. All of those are priority actions. We're also monitoring conditions down at the diversion dam, which include debris removal, making sure we have full function of those gates. Again, those are key to some of the strategies that we have moving forward, like moving the barge upstream. Do we need to lower the water or raise the water? If we go to a zero discharge from the reservoir, we can use that water down below and make sure that we maintain appropriate flows down the Feather River. So there's a lot of things that we're doing as priorities, and that's why we have a wide variety of planning teams and operation teams to make sure that happens. The material that we're moving around won't be put in the hole. Again, that goes back to, as we bring in our recovery team, we're assessing the site conditions, we're developing those recovery options, and then managing that hole will come a little bit later, but not too much later. It's going to be a busy construction up here. So the decision to put what in the hole and where is yet to become.
Fox News.
I have a question regarding evacuations. You said there's no indication that there could be future evacuations, and you're still developing this new criteria to advise the public earlier. Can you give us any clue as to how that protocol would work? What would change?
Sure. So, and I always want to be really careful in terms of the way I'm articulating this, and I know that there's a tendency for people to take shortcuts in language. So, so we're all very clear. We are currently under an evacuation warning condition, which tells people that they need to be prepared to evacuate at an immediate, at a moment's notice if we up it to an immediate evacuation order. The threat of that at this point is significantly reduced. Quite frankly, we are in a much better position today than we were last week, and I feel better about that, but I want to make sure that people are paying attention. Anytime you do something like a evacuation that we had to do on Sunday with such short notice, you can anticipate a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. That's part of the process. But it's important to learn from that situation and try to improve upon it going forward in the event that we would need to evacuate the area again. And the work that is being done in conjunction with local public safety partners and the incredible resource of the CAL FIRE Incident Command teams that we have present. We have both 3 and 4 here doing wonderful work. Is work that will enable us to conduct an evacuation in the future, if necessary, hopefully with significantly more, and I'm talking hours more, notice, and in a way that manages the flow of traffic out of the area in a more efficient way, in a manner that provides alternative staging areas and evacuation sites for people so that we can manage where people are going, and a plan that also provides pathways into the area for public safety resources. That way we're not in conflict with people leaving in terms of the traffic flow and so forth and so on. I am optimistic that we're going to have a much better plan, and they're working feverishly to get that done so that we can get it in place. But I want you to understand also that the work being done today is actually can be the foundation for any future evacuation events that we might have to experience down the road that might not be related to this incident at all. As you may be aware, it's not uncommon for us to have to evacuate during the regional localized flooding that is part of the landscape here during this time of year. And then in fire season, it's not uncommon for us to evacuate. So I am thankful that we have the opportunity to really work on a plan that I think will serve us down the road, long term, and in multiple situations.
Yeah, the gash next to the main spillway looks pretty severe, and I was just to my eyes. Just wondering if you could explain why you're confident that erosion is in check or is manageable.
That's a good question. So first of all, one of the things I've tried to make sure I'm conveying at one level is what you see today, you might not see tomorrow. From the first day that this event happened, there were some very, very difficult decisions that had to be made. One of which is reactivation of the spillway because of the hydrology that was coming out the reservoir, knowing that we were going to have significant damage to the rest of the spillway and potential erosion of those areas downstream. One of the things that we're focused on is the condition of the spillway itself. So it's been stable, especially as we bump up and down. That's again one of our priorities of our technical teams, is really understand the dynamics with the spillway that's up in the upper part of the slope. As we do change the flow regimes coming off that spillway, we will experience different kinds of erosion. So I'm not saying we won't have erosion. In fact, we're seeing erosion, but as that all that energy moves down that hill and hits, especially it's hitting rocks and going different directions. If it's going to hit the more weather material or soil, it's going to carry some of that with it. That's going to be part of the normal process as we move forward here. So that's why we got to see what we can do to reduce those flows and for some time eliminate it so we can better manage that debris pile at the bottom of that spillway. But we don't we do expect some erosion through this process. Again, we need to move a lot of water through this reservoir, and we're able to do it. And I think we're very successful in doing that. And we'll continue to use that infrastructure in its present condition to make sure that we can manage those inflows and outflows of the reservoir. We will be busy removing that material from the bottom of that spillway for quite some time.
You said that you'll be managing the hole will come later. Is that the strategy, or do you plan to just, build a new ramp altogether?
So I didn't catch the first part of the question. So, I didn't catch the first part of your question.
Is your plan to fix the hole, or you're going to build a new spillway altogether?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's why we have our recovery team in place already. They're formulating those strategies based on the best available information. We need some more information to better understand what our options are. One assumption is we rebuild what we have. The hole that's there definitely needs to be mitigated one way or another. It's a very large hole and everything that goes down below it. But I don't want to kind of assume that the spillway will be the solution that we put in place for this coming winter. I think there's all options are on the table, and that's the vetting process that we've started with a wide variety of both the state and federal agencies as well as third-party consultants to really look at what our options are moving forward.
To be clear, options include replacing the entire thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill, you're just talking about erosion, and in the case of a worst-case scenario with the main spill and the rate of the erosion gets too much, at what point would you consider yourself confident in using the emergency spillway?
The emergency spillway is there for an extreme emergency.
Because of all the work that's been going on, would you say right now we're confident if some amount of water had to come over it, we're confident that it will hold? Is that now, or is that
I'm not worried about the dam myself, the emergency spillway. Again, when we go back and look at the function, the shape, like right now it doesn't have any water up against it. It has a lot of soil and rock in front of it, but what we're worried about is the erosion that occurred that flowed over. So we're mitigating that threat and making sure that if we had to take erosion or water over that spillway, that we've minimized the erosion that may occur. And that's why we're going to stay on that. We're going to continue to improve that part of the system, so to speak, until we understand that we're completely good to go, that we will not have to use that spillway based on a snowpack, our runoff, and our reservoir operations.
Can you say how much, I don't know, tons or pounds of the rocks, the stuff you've been putting in, how much is that now?
I don't have the number on the volume of material that has been placed so far today.
And that'll continue indefinitely?
Well, it'll continue until that we're good to go. We believe the risk of needing to use that, again, overtopping or spilling over that emergency spillway has been addressed. So.
Very well. Time for a question.
I had a question for Sheriff Tony. When you're talking about plans and planning,
yes, sir.
Is it fair to assume that there was no plan in the event of an emergency at the dam? And is the city of Oroville supposed to live in perpetual evacuation warning for months or weeks?
No, good. Those are great questions, Andre. Thank you. So, first off, I want to say that there were plans, but the plans contemplated a failure of the dam, which was different than what we ultimately experienced, which was the potential failure of a spillway. We had been working up to, as a matter of fact, from the very beginning when the primary control spillway was damaged, we put together a team consisting of local public safety folks to start working on contingency planning. But that takes time, and when you're trying to determine which area to focus on, that adds time to the process as well. The situation involving the emergency control spillway, frankly, came upon us rather suddenly, and we had to make some decisions, and then utilize the information that we had from the planning that was done contemplating the failure of the dam itself to figure out or approximate what the best course of action would be. And you build into that the time frame that we were operating on, which was rather short, we went wide and erred on the side of caution. In terms of what's going forward, this has given us an opportunity to better understand what the potentials are and develop planning that is more narrowly defined to those affected areas, and come up with better scenarios in terms of moving people out. And so that's the silver lining. That's the positive side of this. I don't anticipate the evacuation warning being in place indefinitely. There are decision points or points in time where I think that it will be appropriate to lift that. One of those is the completion of these more detailed or specified maps that give us an indication as to what the impacted areas would be, contemplating a failure of the emergency spillway or some other event less catastrophic than that. And once that has been vetted and we've looked at it, I think we'll be in a position to start narrowing or the emergency evacuation order and tailoring it more to those specific areas. And then when some additional work is done and there's a higher level of confidence that there's some redundancy in the systems that can move water out of the reservoir, and that we have some, that the work being done to fortify the front of it is complete, then I think that we will look at that situation and evaluate whether or not we can lift the evacuation order from that point forward. But again, I am moving cautiously because I want to make sure that people are paying attention, that they're tuned in to what's going on, and that they're prepared. And I don't see much harm, as I actually see a lot of benefit in continuing to keep that in the forefront of people's mind. But I'm aware of the concern that it causes, and so when I think that the risk is at a level that would make it appropriate to lift the warnings, we'll do that, with the one caveat that we hope, my plan is that should the risk begin to increase for some reason, people can expect us to go back to that warning stage much earlier, and then hopefully be able to provide the warning of an immediate evacuation with quite a bit more time for them to prepare. Good? You bet.
That concludes today's press briefing. We anticipate having an additional briefing tomorrow. We'll have information officers available for you after this.